And welcome to Catechist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.catechist.com. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and our special guest today is Dug Pinnick from the band King Zex. That's where most people know you from, but we're going to be talking about your other project today, Grinder Blues, and you are a bass player and lead singer. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
And now, before we get into Grinder Blues, like I said, most people know you from King's X. Now, the band's been together like 30-something years, right?
Almost 40.
Wow, what an accomplishment.
We started in 1980. So
yeah.
What is this? Yeah.
41 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I ask is, like I said, that's where most people know you from. And, you know, I'm a big Kiss fan. And I started hearing about you guys like around 1987 because the Kiss drummer at the time, Eric Carr, he was a huge fan. And he was always talking how he loved your guys' band. Did you ever get the chance to meet him?
Oh, yeah, we met him. We knew him. We used to hang with him. Sorry that he passed away.
Yeah, of course.
Sad about that.
Yeah.
Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley and the drummer all are huge King's X fans. Every time I see them, they tell me how much they love King's X and how they just love us.
Yeah, and before we go on and talk about Grinder Blues, what's currently going on with the band? You guys are working towards a new album or anything like that?
New album's finished. Record company's got it, and they're getting ready to get the campaign going to put it out. It'll probably be out in 2022.
Oh, that's great to hear. And now we're going to start talking about Grinder Blues now. So how long has that project been together?
We've been together about 8 or 9. I'm not sure, really.
Oh, okay, so longer than I thought.
Honest to God, I don't know. We've had 2 records we did, though. This one, and we did one about 3 years ago also that most people didn't know about.
Yeah, it makes sense. See, the reason I asked is I wasn't sure if this was a new band because I never heard about it until the publicist reached out to me, and I checked out some of the music. I thought, wow, this is cool, and kind of makes sense because the album is called El Dos. Now, as I said, you're the lead singer and a bass player, and I was looking at the electric press kit that people can check out on YouTube for the band, and you kind of say, you know, in there at one point, I've just been making kind of music my whole life, which is we just kind of we're talking about. And so talk about like what's different for you, because like I listened to the track Burn the Bridge, and then also Gotta Get Me Some of That, and both songs to me kind of really stand out in the sense that they're both totally different from each other. So is that kind of an idea behind Grinder Blues?
Really, the idea behind Grinder Blues was to take the ZZ Top approach.
Oh, wow.
The album Tres Hombres is one of my favorite albums, and the guys they love that album. And we kind of took that album as a template for what we wanted to do, because we wanted to focus. We didn't want to just get together and throw a bunch of ideas together and make songs. We want to focus on blues and maybe take it one step further in a direction, because it's 2021 now, and I know that the Tres Hombres album changed the way I thought about music. It changed the way I thought about blues, because I grew up around the blues as a child, and I heard it. I lived in the Chicago area, so my relatives used to buy all the blues records from Chess Records and stuff. I heard everything as a child back in the 50s, so I know blues. I know authentic blues. And we wanted to just make something that had some kind of authenticity, but to push the envelope like ZZ Top did. They played it heavier. It seemed like it was deeper and darker, but it was comical at the same time, and they stayed traditionally straight up blues. But it was progressive if you really listened to the songwriting, which was really cool at the time. So we took that approach, and the only difference for us was we took our guitars and tuned them down 2 steps lower to just go a little bit further in the deep low end of the blues. That's kind of interesting.
See, I wasn't aware you were originally from Chicago, because King's X is from Texas. So was that a big part of you relocating to Texas, was because of being influenced by that music?
Oh, no. King's X got an offer by a record company to play, to back up one of their young musicians that was like a teen, kind of a Christian teen throb, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And they hired us to be his band. His name was Morgan Cryer. And we did that for a year, and they moved us to Texas and put us on a salary. And we saved our lives, because we were about broke.
Wow.
We had been together for 5 years, and we were playing these little shitty clubs in Missouri, and nothing was happening. And literally $15 a week maybe. Jerry had a family, and we were starving, and we were in the middle of nowhere with no hope. And luckily, it was because I've always had a reputation in the rock world from the 70s on up as a singer.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always sang in everything, and I've always turned heads. And even if the band didn't go anywhere, or nothing happened, there's some reason there's a bunch of people that just kind of honed in on me and just kept an eye on me. And I have people in my life now that saw me play back when I was in my 20s that are still following my career. So with that, King's X actually that's why King's X got the call from the record company. The guy called me up and he just said, "Luke, dude, I heard you're a singer and blah, blah, blah. You want to come do this? And I hear you got a band and I've heard about it." Which, just some college kids that heard us, So it's just word of mouth. Everything in my life has been word of mouth. So that's how we got to Texas from Springfield, Missouri. Because coming from Chicago, I moved to Springfield, Missouri. That's where I met Jerry and Ty playing. I joined up with a band called Petra, a Christian band, for like a second, and they broke up before we even rehearsed. And so I was stuck in Missouri, and luckily I met Jerry and Ty. And Jerry actually was asked to be in the band Petra also, so that's how I met him.
Wow, that's kind of interesting to learn that you were you were originally part of like a Christian band. Now, I was curious on that front. Were you ever at all a Stryper fan, and were you kind of interested to see how far they were able to take what they do?
I know those guys, and they're really great guys. Back in the day when they came out, I hated glam metal. I hated that stuff, so I didn't like it at all. But I did. I saw them live twice, and I really was impressed by how good they are, But, that was a genre that I just wasn't into, that whole glam thing. I was into the European English kind of rock, The Cure and The Church and bands like that. They were heavy rock bands, but they weren't that glammy thing, that I just didn't get the glam thing. It was just too it was too superficial for me. Even with Stryper, I was real proud of them that they would go out and be that bold and do what they did, but it was a gimmick also. So, and that's probably why I got away from the whole Christian world. It's just everything was for sale. And you can't and you're judged for one little thing that you've done, and you're blackballed for one little mistake or whatever.
So true.
That was just too much for me.
And then you kind of touched on this, Doug, but like when you were first starting out, doing your music, did you always think of yourself as a singer, or more like did you hear other people like you're saying kind of say, "No, dude, you're a singer"? And how surprised were you that the more and more you heard that?
I wasn't, because I've heard it all my life. I've heard it so much that it doesn't even matter, and it doesn't even make sense. I mean, literally, somebody says, "You're a good singer." I'm going, "Yeah, well, thanks." It's like I look in the mirror all my life and wash my face. That's about how I feel about my voice. I'm a bass player in my heart.
That's what I would ask.
I wanted and loved to do. Singing was just something that I luckily was able to do naturally, and I did hone in on it when I was a teenager, when Motown came out with all those songs and stuff, Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, and the Atlantic stuff. I started really listening to these singers and started really copying them, really, and listening to, like when Aretha sang Respect, I know I can sing that song along with her, every nuance and everything. Superstition by Stevie Wonder, same thing. Those were my mentors at one time, which influenced me probably to this day, gospel type music. But I've listened to all kinds of different music. Even in grade school, I would sing in contests and do Frank Sinatra songs and stuff like that. It was the 50s, So, Bing Crosby was one of my favorite singers. I just loved the way his voice sounded. It was so smooth. I've always honed in on singers. There was never a genre or anyone telling me what I should listen to or what I shouldn't. Back in the 50s, it was everything. Everything was just there. You had everybody was playing everything because it was new. So that was a good thing about it. And the blues was the same thing. I was a child, though, when they brought the blues records in. But I remember being in the front yard of my cousin's house hearing, I remember my favorite song was "Oh Baby, You Don't Have to Go."
Wow.
By Jimi Reed. That was my favorite tune. But
yeah, and being originally from Chicago, I'd imagine, too, that you were quite influenced. I mean, talking about the blues, I know Chicago, that's what they're basically known for, music-wise, is there was a heavy blues scene, especially back in the day. Is it still that way?
I'm talking about, I lived there. I saw it.
Yeah. And so, of course, that's going to have an effect on you. And do you remember, as far as, really being kind of turned on by ZZ Top, what was the album, or, how did you kind of discover that music?
Well, Tres Hombres was the first ZZ Top record. It was like 1971.
Wow.
So I was about 21 at the time, and I put it on, and I loved, the music was great at the time in my mind, but the stories is what got me.
Yeah.
The Mexican Blackbird and Waiting for the Bus and Jesus Just Left Chicago. I mean, those are just, the songs got me. And then I started listening to the guitar and the bass and the drums, and I'm going, wow. I could relate to them because we're all around the same age, and we're all trying to make rock music, So it was sort of, I felt like I was in a gang. And the more they talked about Texas, the more I was fascinated with Texas.
Yeah.
Lyrically, the Mexican Blackbird, and I mean, just all those songs, which I found out was just fake. It wasn't even true.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it, though, is when we moved to Texas, we met Sam Taylor, who worked for ZZ Top and was Bill Ham, their manager's first cousin.
Oh, wow.
And he worked with ZZ Top for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And when he left them, and he took us on, so it was kind of like a big family down there of the little old bands from Texas. We're called that other little old band.
Oh yeah, definitely. And and so when you guys first moved to Texas, was Texas everything you kind of dreamed it would be? Like, did it live up to?
No, it was completely the opposite. I was expecting to see mountains, desert, and just back roads, and just that whole world that they talked about. I got to Houston, it was like I just left Florida.
Yeah.
It was because I lived in St. Pete for a while, and it was no different. It was humid, it rained, it was green, there was no desert, there was no nothing, and I'm going, wow, what's the deal? And then I realized, Texas is so huge.
Yeah, and then a song like,
you go through different things.
A song like Jesus Leaves Chicago. I mean, a kid from Chicago, that's got to really kind of touch you right there.
Oh yeah, it did.
And you talk about you're singing, and people always saying what a great singer you are, but as you mentioned, you're a great bass player too. And I think one of the reasons you've been able to have such a long career, not just even with King's X, but these other projects that you do, is everything you kind of do, it does not sound the same. I mean, like, I think that's part of the reason you do something like Grinder Blues, or even KXM. That's the other kind of project you're most known for, probably outside of King's X. And I think each of these projects you do, Doug, not only does your voice and your bass playing stand out, but it's kind of like, if you were to ask somebody, who does Dug Pinnick sound like? I can't really say, like you sound like any of those guys that influenced you. You got your own unique sound. I think, voice-wise, that's why, everybody wants to work with you. And like every record you put out does not sound the same, And so I think that's why you've had such a long-lasting career.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad I'm still here. That's all. And I always try to push the envelope. My solo record is done, and it'll be out next month also.
Yeah.
It's called Joy Bomb, and so we'll have to get you some information on that too.
Oh yeah.
Later, and I'm excited about that. I've got 3 projects coming out in the next few months.
And what's going on with KXM? I mean, is that still something you and George are like?
Yeah. We've talked about doing them before, but at the moment with COVID and everything that's going on, we haven't had a chance to
do it,
to really do anything. But we talk about it, so it'll be down the road.
And like you said, you're 3 albums into that. I mean, it's going to be number 4 if you get to that point. And I think with just those 3 albums that are out, you guys have created quite a nice little following. I think you've developed kind of a sound, which is kind of, when you go and do it for the first time, you're kind of like, well, what is this supposed to sound like? But I really think you've developed, a sound for that band.
Thanks, man. We with that band, we just decided to let everybody be who they are, and no one writes this song, and no one tells the other person what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a result of it, everybody was free to be themselves, which made it unique only because, I mean, any band that sounds unique, it's because everybody in the band is doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And they figured out a way to make it work with the other person, you know, and I think that's what we did with KXM. There's, you know, I could say Ray played too much, but at the end of the day, that's how he plays, and that's what makes, you know, I can't imagine him doing a 4 on the floor on some of those songs. It wouldn't work, you know, and George is the same way. George is just a very unique, weird guitar player, and he was able to just go wherever he wanted to. We pushed him, you know. We would make up a riff, and there'd be the drums going. I'd make up a bass line, and we'd go, George, what do you think? Put something on this. And he'd play something just bizarre, and we'd look at each other and go, there it is. And we'd all just laugh and keep on playing, you know. So and with KXM, it was a labor of fun.
Yeah, and
same thing with Grinder Blues, too.
Yeah, and you talk about Ray Luzier, the drummer. I mean, he's a guy that's played. I mean, he's got quite a varied career himself. He's played with everybody from, you know, David Lee Roth to the Nixons. He's with Korn, and, you know, in fact, being the Korn drummer, more people, when they think of Korn, they think of him as the drummer. They don't realize that there was a drummer that came before, you know.
Yeah, he's been with them for a long time.
Yeah, and you know, talking about George Lynch, I think George Lynch is one other guy besides you, Doug, that I can think of that has done so many different types of project. I mean, at this point, he's not just known for Dokken, but, you know, Lynch Mob, and he's kind of put that to bed. But, you know, KXM is, you know, right up there with those two bands, you know.
Thanks.
With you know, your guys' body of work. And I know another thing I love that you did a couple years ago is you put out like a Jimi Hendrix tribute album. I thought, you know, that the way you did those songs, just it was very masterful.
Oh, glad you liked it. Glad you listened to it.
Yeah, I guess not a lot of people bought it, but it's one of those things, I think, that maybe just not because it wasn't a good album, but a lot of people, like you said, maybe didn't know about it.
Yeah, that's what I think. People just don't know. Everything is about promotion, you know, because, you know, if everybody can get a chance to hear you, you're always guaranteed to have a better following, just because there's always somebody out there that like what you're doing. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You just got to find those people.
And as far as bass playing, I always love to ask people, like, in your case, why was the bass your instrument of choice? What drew to that instrument?
I was driven to it as a child, literally. I remember I was 6, maybe, and my teenage cousins used to buy the rock and roll records, you know, Little Richard, Chuck Berry and stuff, and they brought home a record called Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. It was an old 78 record.
I heard that.
This was a long time ago. They put that record on, and I remember I came over to the house, because they were all, we got some new records, and they put that one on first, and all I remember was the bass part. For the first time in my life, it was like, oh my God, it just attracted me, and I was just a child. I didn't know really what it was, but that's all I wanted to hear was that bass sound, and I carried it through my whole life. I remember playing as a child with a broom, left-handed, walking around acting like I was playing bass. You know, I used to just fake it, and then finally, literally being poor and kind of being pretty clueless, I didn't realize I could buy one if I just worked a little bit and worked at it or something. But when I was 23 is when I got my first bass and started playing. Oh, wow. And I remember a friend of mine loaned me a bass that he bought for his girlfriend for Christmas. I was 23. And I played it. He came to get it, to pack it up and give it to her for Christmas, and I wouldn't give it to him. He asked several times, and I would not give him that bass back. So he just didn't ask anymore, literally. And that was so long ago. And now if you ask him today, he'll just tell you, he said he didn't want to give it back, but I just couldn't break his heart, so I just let him keep it.
And you know, it sounds, you know, hearing that story, it sounds like you're really connected to the bass. And I mean, anything I've ever, you know, heard you're playing or anything, I mean, a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, you know, bass players are like fellow guitar players, or if you play the bass, pretty much play the guitar. But I think there's a few guys like you, Nikki Sixx, John Entwistle, even Gene Simmons, Geddy Lee. There are those bass guys that kind of really stand out because they're quite different from everybody else.
Yeah, Chris Squire and Jamie Jamerson are my two favorites.
Oh, okay. And were you much of a Sabbath fan? The reason I asked, I was curious. What you thought of Geezer Butler as a bass player?
I know Geezer, and I thought his bass playing was amazing on Black Sabbath. I never noticed it till
later
how great he was until I had to do some Black Sabbath covers.
Yeah.
And then I sat and listened to his bass, and at that point I realized, oh wow, he doesn't play along with Tony hardly at all.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is cool, and I gained even more respect. And in fact, it influenced me. It helped me, and this is like about 10 years ago too.
Yeah.
It helped me think about riffs, guitar riffs, and what I need to do for bass on it, instead of just playing along with the guitar because the riff is badass. Maybe I can do what Geezer did on the new King's X record. We have a tune that has this thick guitars that sound like Black Sabbath, a part of the song does, and I literally took the bass line and did a Geezer Butler type vibe with it, so he's a big deal.
And then when I have a new appreciation for him too, when I learned that on all those early Black Sabbath albums that Ozzy was on, that he wrote most of the lyrics, not Ozzy.
Yeah. I remember Master of Puppets was probably my favorite Black Sabbath album, and it was because I was a real heavy Christian at the time too. So those lyrics it was metal, singing about have you been saved, and the Pope and stuff like that, and it was great because back in that time, Christians were not supposed to listen to rock music, especially Black Sabbath. They were satanic.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't not listen to music if it was good. I just didn't understand why they were telling me don't listen to this. So.
And see, that's the amazing thing to be talking to a guy like you, Doug. That you've been around just as long as I have, I guess. And actually, I guess the album you're talking about is Master of Reality, Master of Puppets was
1971. I saw them on that tour.
Yeah, and when you stop and think about that album's 50 years old this year. I mean, how amazing is that?
Jeez.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody too about Alice Cooper, Love It to Death. That's 50 years old too. You got all these classic albums that are celebrating like 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, Sticky Fingers, the Rolling Stones. That's another one we're doing a show on later today, but just amazing.
It's amazing that all those records are still timeless.
Timeless, yeah, and that's what makes them. I mean, another one. I don't know how big of an influence John Lennon, but Imagine that turns 50 this year.
Oh wow!
See, so all these important albums are celebrating special anniversaries. And King's X, like I said, that's where most people know you from. Is there one album that you kind of say, okay, that's the album that you feel best represents that band?
Nah, there's no record that best represents us.
See, that's a thing.
I've got favorite records and stuff.
Yeah.
I think Dogman really kicked ass.
Yeah.
But every record is us just creating music from the point of what we feel at that moment. We don't sit down and go, let's make a hard rock record or a progressive record. We just we all write in King's X. We all write songs, and so we just bring all our songs to the party.
I mean, you guys sound nothing like Rush, but I kind of think of you as a Rush type band in the sense that you guys were like alternative or progressive before there was that, in the sense that you kind of do your own thing, and I compare it to Rush because if you look at Rush, all three guys in Rush are very powerful musicians, but when they come together, they make a very strong force.
Yeah, they do. They're very unique.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you guys are all technically great players. You all stand out on your own, and again, when the band comes together, it really is something quite special. Now, getting back to Grinder Blues, talk a little bit about some other guys in the band and how you all hooked up.
I met Scott, who plays drums. Scott and Chabo are brothers. Oh. They've been playing together all their life.
Oh wow!
And so I met Scott at a party at Ray Luzier's house about 10 years ago. Ray's son is his first birthday.
Oh wow!
And so we all went, and I had just moved to LA, so I I didn't know hardly anybody in town. Now I know everybody. But
Yeah.
And so Ray invited me over, and me and Scott were talking about, work basically, because I had just moved there, and this is 10 years ago, so musicians were pretty much starving at that point. We didn't know what we were doing, and I said, well, I want to hook up with somebody and write some songs and get them placed in movies or TV commercials or something. I mean, that's about the best thing I can make some money on.
Yeah.
And so Scott said, well, they do that, him and his brother, and they had a song in Sons of Anarchy and another song placed in a movie. So and they said, you want to get together and write some tunes? And I go, yeah. So we got together and started writing some songs, some kind of simple jingle things that you could sell. And as we started talking, we all three of us realized that we had a really heavy blues connection. I grew up with it, and they played with B.B. King, Ray Charles.
Wow.
And they were Sun Seal's band for a while too, so they played with some heavyweight musicians in their day. And I thought, well, these guys, and they're white.
Yeah.
So I'm going, well, these guys should be able to pull this shit off. So I said, let's do a thing like ZZ Top, and just go right down to the core of it. And Little went to MIT with Ray Luzier, Scott. That's his name. We call him Scott Little. He knows every authentic blues drum beat that there is. There's 100 of them.
Oh yeah.
You think there's one shuffle? No, there's 30 of them. New Orleans shuffle, the Chicago shuffle, blah blah blah. So anyway, we just say, hey man, come up with let's do a shuffle. He said, here's a Kansas City shuffle. And he'll start doing it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're writing, everybody wants some loving, And I mean, that's literally how it started out. And with the band, we also decided no heavy lyrics. That's one thing I didn't, since I'm writing most of the lyrics, I just said, no, we're not going to do heavy lyrics. We're going to do like ZZ Top, fun stories. On our first record, there's a song about hit by a train. That's a song about my grandfather. He was literally hit by a train.
Oh, wow.
Really? Yeah, the story is exactly what happened. And on the new record, I'll Find Another Way Around.
Wow.
That's the first song on the record. Bear with me. It's a cool story, I think.
Yeah.
Miles Fullwider, he produced and recorded the record. And he says, hey guys, you ready to do the second record? We go, yeah. So we ain't got no money. He said, well, come down to this college that I work at. We have a state-of-the-art studio. Let's make a record in front of a bunch of kids, my students.
Wow.
And we go, sure.
What a class to take.
So I drove to Cleveland, Mississippi. Cleveland, Mississippi is where the blues was born.
Wow.
The college was a blues college.
Oh, interesting.
Which is weird. Yeah, it's a small little town. Got there, come to find out, Batesville, this town is 10 miles away, which my dad's family grew up at because they were at the Bates Plantation.
Oh, wow.
And 10 miles the other way was the Choctaw Indian Reservation where my grandmother was born. Okay, so here I am in a place where my dad's side of the family all came from. I didn't know anybody there.
Yeah.
I'm not in contact. I hardly know any of my dad's family really, but it was just overwhelming. Then we go down the road a little bit, and there's the crossroads.
Wow.
The cemetery, everything. We're standing going, the crossroads. And then a little ways from there was the Dockery. The Dockery was this cotton plantation where all the blues players went and picked cotton. Mm-hmm. And they all came from that place.
Oh, amazing. Muddy,
all those places. And so being there, that whole vibe, it was overwhelming, and that's what my part in this record is. I put my heart into it from the way I felt there.
Oh,
but
wow.
The song "I'll Find Another Way Around" is I was driving down there from Texas, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I got to the Mississippi River. Now let me backtrack a little bit. I got off the highway, and all of a sudden it was another 40. It was about a 20-mile drive. off the highway, but it was 2-lane highways in crossways.
Wow.
You know, nothing curved. Okay, you turn on the next little number, you know,
Street.
Farm Road 12 or
Wow.
whatever it was.
Wow.
So, and it took me it was about 45 minutes.
Find your way.
Because it was so, and you had to drive the speed limit because they said there were police everywhere that will pull you over. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere, just woods, but there were police waiting to catch you. So, you know, I had weed in the car, so I'm driving just speed limit, kind of scared.
Yeah.
Got to a corner, and it said turn left. Or turn right, I think it was.
Yeah.
I turned right, and immediately there was this rickety 2-lane bridge that went up and seemed like it did not end.
Wow.
And I went, and it said the Mississippi River. Oh, my heart started pounding. It was midnight, around 1 o'clock in the morning, dark outside, and the bridge had lights in the middle of the fucking bridge that dangled. Those kind of lights with light bulbs, and they went all the way across the bridge. Okay, so I thought, well, maybe it's a short bridge, but it was pretty high.
Yeah.
I started driving, and it's going plump, 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 literally.
Wow.
And you could see the potholes on the bridge. And it took, I think the bridge was it was a very wide part of the river.
Wow.
It was one of those, so I was on that bridge for a long time, and I got to the top of it and couldn't see anything but blackness everywhere.
Oh, wow.
I was really scared.
I bet, yeah.
And so I just kept driving, and I got back down to the ground in level and kept on going. And so, you know, when I leave, you better believe that when I leave, I'll find another way around.
Yeah.
And that's what the chorus is.
and
I did. I found another way around, too. It was awesome.
That's when your GPS comes in handy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, what a story. Now, in regards to Grinder Blues, have you guys, I know you've done the 2 albums, but have you done any live shows to support it yet?
Not for this album. Since COVID happened, nobody done nothing. Yeah, it's been. I haven't played on a stage in almost 2 years now.
But I mean, as a band, like in support of the first album, you guys were able to go out and do some shows.
We did some shows. Not a whole lot, but we did a blues tour of Scandinavia, which was pretty cool. We played all the little blues clubs in all those countries. We just took our guitars and a pedal, and Scott took drumsticks, and that was it. And we got in a little car, and we drove from town to town and played these little bars for about 30, 40 people or less. It was so much fun. We played with whatever was on the stage, and it was great.
And there's got to be something liberating about it. I mean, I got to imagine it's quite different from, you know, the big shows you do with King's X and stuff.
Yeah.
And like that's more of a rock crowd even. And like you said, you kind of play with whatever. And so a lot of times I would imagine when you do a show like that, there's a certain percentage of audience, maybe just they have no idea who Dug Pinnick is or what he's done before, just discovering you through this band for the first time. And, you know, for your perspective, that's got to be a pretty cool thing. Like
It was. It really was. People are freaking out on the first record saying that we reinvented blues, you know. I don't think so, but
that's a good thing to hear,
the idea.
But after after you hear somebody tell a story like you just told, I could really kind of imagine the influence that came out, you know, just through the music. I mean, and again, I'll tell you, so far I've just had a chance to hear the 2 songs, which is, you know, Got to Give Me Some of That, and that's got kind of a great kind of blues, kind of ZZ Top kind of influence. I could hear that now that you say that. A little bit of a funk to it. And the other one was Burn the Bridge, and again, just based on those 2 songs, Doug, I want to go out and buy the album. You know what I mean? And
awesome. And those 2 songs aren't really representative of how dark we get with blues. I mean, to me, I call those 2 songs both just rock songs to me.
Yeah.
Like blues rock songs. But when you put the record on, I think those 2 songs that you just mentioned are the most rock and roll songs on the record.
So that makes sense why you would kind of release those as the first 2 songs. I think when you want to grab somebody's attention, those are definitely songs that they'll go to. And I almost left was left feeling, even though I've only heard the two songs, like, these two songs, they sound so drastically different. It kind of leaves me with the thought, probably every song on the album kind of is like that, where it kind of stands out on its own, and maybe even could.
Yeah, they are. They're really rooted in the blues, but they're quite different from each other.
Yeah, and so like you got an interesting fan base in that, like I said, a certain percentage of people that are buying this album maybe know nothing about King X. They're just discovering you for the first time off of this, and then they will go back and discover those King X albums when they're aware. Oh yeah, he's got this other band over here. Go check out what he did here.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, and that's kind of a cool thing that you got these both because they're both so different. And then I was also seeing one of the guys talking about Electric Press Kit. I forget which guy it was, but he was saying how the two brothers were like huge King's X fans. So I'd imagine for them to kind of not only get a chance to meet you, but actually work with you, that has to be like the ultimate kind of fan dream. Like, this guy I grew up on his music, and now I'm playing with him. And to your perspective, like you said, you were a big blues fan and stuff. I imagine two guys that played with B.B. King, they've got to have some great stories to tell too.
They don't have any stories, but so far I've really heard hardly any. But just the respect that I have for them doing that is what attracted me. But we never talked about it much. We
Amazing. Need to. Yeah. So, well, Doug, definitely, I've enjoyed talking to you. I don't know if you can tell that, but I'm a fan myself. I always love talking music, but let's keep in touch. And I'll tell you what, when the solo album's ready to drop, let's do this again, because I'd love to spread the love and word about any music that you put out, because I'm a fan.
Awesome. If you know how to get a hold of Rat Pack Records, just tell them that we need to do an interview.
Oh, okay. I will do that, my friend. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.